I always enjoy tower defence games. I find them engrossing to play, but also quite relaxing sometimes, mowing down waves of enemies and feeling quite powerful and all-conquering whilst doing so. Space Cycle takes a tower defence mechanic and adds a few unique twists to it, which makes it stand out from the crowd. The first thing is that it all takes place on a single square grid on a spaceship where you play as a space defence officer. Enemies will always appear in the bottom right hand side of the screen and they'll run round the perimeter of the spaceship that you're trying to defend. And inside the centre are 25 squares where you can place various different turrets and towers to defend your spaceship. Each enemy carries weight, and if that weight cumulatively overcomes a certain threshold, then the game is over because you're overwhelmed by enemies and then the weight of them all will just collapse the spaceship down. And so what you've got to do is make sure that you find the right recipe of towers and boost them at the right times to keep the stem of enemies at a manageable level, and then in the final wave clear off all of the enemies before the timer runs out. Now, there are a couple of unique mechanics in Space Cycle beyond that weight thing that really come into play. The first one is that there are two distinct modes to Space Cycle. The one that I'd recommend you starting with is random mode, where you don't get to place down where the towers actually sit, but you do get to choose which of the towers that you're going to drop in next, and this gets you used to the different tower types and the variety of them. Most towers come in a standard format, which prioritises damage, a slow format, which will slow down enemy movement, but then also mean that when they get to their lowest 20% of health, they'll receive more damage than usual. Or it could be that they then attack enemies that have been slowed, for example, and deal more damage. And then there's also a resonance version of a weapon too, which means that it won't quite pack initially as much of a punch as, say, the standard weapon. But what it will do is enable you to cumulatively pick resonance powered weapons so that they then add a little mini multiplier to all of the different ones. If you've got, say, 5 resonance weapons, there'll be a bigger multiplier than, say, 3. There's a lot of different nuances to it, and this all comes into the secondary way of making a tower better by boosting it or upgrading it. Now, an upgrade is not permanent in Space Cycle. It's for the round only, and each round can last up to 60 seconds and then it resets with a new wave of enemies coming in. And so what you'll be doing is using these purple square cubes as a currency to then spend to boost a tower and its abilities for that up to 60-second period. So you need to kind of decide early on in a wave what you're going to boost, when you're going to boost it, and also make sure that you're still collecting these purple cubes, because you'll need to keep on replenishing your stock at a speed that means that you might be able to survive this round, but then you've spent all of your upgrades and you won't have them for the next round, and then you'll fall behind. This took me a little bit of a while to get used to, because I'm so used to tower defense games being you upgrade a tower and it stays at that level for the rest of that level, for example. Getting used to going, I'm going to boost this tower, and this tower, depending on the type of enemies coming through or what the weight status is and whether you need to stem the tide or whether you can afford to let things slide and accumulate upgrade currency. It's really that kind of risk versus reward factor. And that's what works well for the random levels, although the random placement of things does kind of make it out of your control, which is a bit of a shame. The other free mode is far more of a grind, and what it does is it provides hundreds of levels of difficulty where as you go up the levels of difficulty it will add on more health to all of the enemies, and you'll need to spend some currency that you'll get by replaying the game repeatedly to then get down better versions of all of the different towers that we've discussed. There's a standard one, then there's kind of an advanced green hued one, then there's the next tier up where it's like an omega silver one, and then there's like an epic purple variety which has way more stats than anything else. And this is where some of the upgrades that you can then spend on will give permanent increases wave on wave on wave to some of these big weapons, but they cost so much money that you have to be really careful about when you choose them, and this is where the grind comes in, because you only get rewarded a few coins per wave that you kill on the lower difficulties, and then you'll have to grind to earn money to buy like the very basic version of a tower and slowly level up and level up and level up, increasing the capability of all of the towers that you've got in the 25 slots that you have available. That to me is a really, really long grind game, and I'm not sure the reward is worth the effort putting in. And it feels like it's a mode that needs a bit more structure to make it feel like you aren't just sitting there watching things run around a square, just waiting to accumulate currency, almost like an idler game. And that's not really what I'd signed up for Space Cycle for. So I'd have really appreciated a kind of a bit of a middle ground between the random mode and the free play mode, because free play lets you place your towers wherever you want. Random doesn't, but random has more structured levels than what free play does. So I wanted a mishmash of the two modes to make it the ultimate Space Cycle experience. And so whilst I do think this is a good game and there's some interesting mechanics here, it doesn't quite land the execution on them all. And once I'd completed random mode, I started off in the free play mode and very quickly thought, do you know what, I don't want to waste my time doing this, but I can see other people perhaps getting the itch that they want to scratch through this if they like to just watch accumulative figures grow and grow and grow and see how far they can get. Space Cycle is out now. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/higherplane-network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.